Hello everyone and welcome back to Fly From Home. I'm Kitty, I'm a real-world commercial flying instructor, and today I'll be talking about how to best utilise constant speed propellers in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, I'm not going to bore you all to death with an hour-long briefing all about the theory of how and why these things work. All I'm going to show you is how to use this mysterious blue lever right here to improve your immersion and your realism when flying in Microsoft Flight Sim. Now, I know I said I'm not going to bore you to death, but I lied. At least for a minute or two, I'm just going to explain very basically what the principle at work is here. Now, a propeller is just a small wing, basically, rotating around on a hub, which provides lift in the direction of travel, which we call thrust. With me so far? So, that's all well and good while you sat on the ground, just spinning this thing around like a giant fan. However, when your plane starts moving forward, that forward motion through the air, or the relative airflow as we call it, is going to start doing funky things to the relative angle of attack of the propeller, which is going to change how efficiently this thing is moving that air backwards. Now, you can set the angle of your prop blades to be efficient at only one airspeed. So you're going to pick your cruise airspeed, right? Since that's the speed you'll be spending most of your time at. Or maybe you'll pick climb, since your plane is going to be doing lots of climbing and descending. But basically, a plane with a fixed pitch prop is like a car with only one gear. There's only one speed at which it's going to be working properly for you. So, how about we change that? Now, a constant speed prop is capable via a magic mix of hydraulics and nitrogen and springs and spinning weights and all sorts of wizardry of keeping the prop constantly at the correct angle of attack for best efficiency, regardless of your airspeed. It also allows us to select an RPM at which the prop and engine are most efficient, and the blades will constantly adjust their angle to keep the prop at this RPM. So suddenly we've gone from a car with only one gear to a car with infinite gears, which is clever, huh? And this has a huge impact on the efficiency of your aeroplane, your overall efficiency, as you might imagine. Right, okay, and we're back in the sim. So boring part over. What we're going to do now is a very short flight to demonstrate how to use the constant speed propeller practically in a way that will improve the aircraft efficiency and avoid manifold overpressure that could potentially damage the aircraft's engine. So we're here on the ground at Liverpool John Lennon on a rather lovely sunny day. FS2020 has just had a update for all the UK scenery, so I'm hoping to see some rather nice scenery as I'm flying around here. So we're just going to take off, and I'm going to demonstrate what's going on. So while we're on the ground, on the takeoff roll, that kind of thing, there is really no functional difference between a constant speed prop aircraft and a fixed pitch prop aircraft. Your throttle is actually changing the RPM just as it would on a fixed pitch aircraft, because you haven't reached an RPM at which the constant speed unit can start working. It's all kind of based on a combination of hydraulic pressure and also centrifugal force spinning around weights inside the unit. So, without further ado, let's get the brakes off. And let's get our Bonanza, which we have here today, looking rather lovely, off the ground and flying. So, set the power, so just going to shove the power all the way forward. As you can see, the RPM's going up there. Airspeed's alive. And there's our rotate, so we'll pull her off the runway. And accelerate. So initially, no different to flying a fixed pitch aeroplane. You want maximum RPM, maximum power set while you get away from the ground. I usually say until you get to about 500 feet away from the ground, you don't want to be touching anything on the prop or the power setting. Getting the gear up, getting the flap up, got the clean the aircraft up, and then start accelerating towards your VY speed, which in this aircraft is 100 knots. We've got it marked there on the little speed tape over there. And we're going to attempt to maintain runway heading, despite my awful flying skills. So, now we're safely away from the ground, we can start to think about setting our aircraft up for the climb. Now, max continuous power, max cruise in this aircraft is 2525 according to the book figures that I could find. So that's 25 inches of manifold pressure here, which is basically a measure of the amount of torque that your engine is developing, and 2500 RPM, which is displayed here. Now, as you can see, the RPM is flashing because we're in the red zone, so it's telling us to reduce RPM to keep the aircraft operating in a nominal sort of safe operating window. So we'll do that first. Firstly, we're going to reduce power. So we're going to go left to right. Thank you. Thanks for that very much. So we're going to go left to right across the throttle quadrant, adjusting the throttle first, then adjusting our mysterious blue lever. So we're going to bring the power back to 25 inches of manifold pressure. There we go, we've got our 25 set now, and then we're going to reduce the blue lever to 2,500 RPM. So it's coming back now. And there's 3,000 feet, so we're going to level there, and that's our climb power setting. Now, it's also our fast cruise power setting. So if we're aiming for about 150 odd knots, 160 knots I guess, is about a fast cruise in this aircraft, then we don't have to touch anything on our prop or our throttle. We just leave it where it is. And in fact, I'm going to just tweak it forward very slightly. Try and get it bang on 25, close enough. Get our aeroplane trimmed out. And then I'll show you the final part of the process. Now, in a carburetted aircraft, I'd be leaning the mixture out. This is a fuel-injected aircraft, so essentially all I'm doing is setting a fuel flow. So I'm going to set about 15 gallons per hour, and we can see our fuel flow indicated on the gauge here. So, zoom in a little bit. You can see we're doing about 20 at the moment, so I'll pull it back until we've got about 15. And we're all set up for the cruise now. Right, now our plane's all settled out, all trimmed out, and we're happily blasting along at 164 knots. So that's fantastic if we're in a hurry, but if we're not, and if we're looking to save some fuel, we might want to reduce that propeller RPM to something a little more efficient. Now, this aeroplane has a efficiency power setting of 21 inches of manifold pressure and 2100 RPM. So if I'm going to start reducing power still further, again, I'm going to start from the left. I'm going to bring the power back to 21 inches. And then I'm going to reduce the RPM again to 2100 RPM. You can hear the RPM reducing. So it's something of a strange feature to those of you who might be used to fixed pitch aeroplanes. When you move the throttle, you get no change in engine note, really no change of note. It's when you move the RPM lever that you get that change in engine note, because the engine note is generally tied to the engine RPM. And our fuel flow, we can bring that back still further, so we can bring it back to about 12 gallons per hour now. And as you can see, our aeroplane's slowing down. We're having to retrim. Doing quite a bad job of it because I'm a terrible pilot. Right. Let's get it settled back out again, and we'll see what sort of speed it settles at. It's still probably going to be quite fast, or at least quite fast in terms of light aircraft that cruise around usually at about 100 knots. Because this is a beefy light aircraft with a big old 6-cylinder engine. So we've got quite a bit of advantage there. There we go, so about 136, 137 knots in an efficiency setting, which is really nice actually. Okay, so we've turned our aeroplane around, and now we're heading back towards the vicinity of Liverpool Airport. So, how about if we wanted to speed our aeroplane back up again? Now, so far we've just gone left to right. If we want to go back the other way and start pushing the power forward again, we need to go right to left. So the first thing we're going to change is our fuel flow. We're going to bring that forward back to our 15 gallons per hour, around about there. Then we're going to adjust RPM. So we're going to creep the RPM back up to 2500, and then we're going to push the throttle forward to 25 inches of manifold pressure. There we go, and we should start to see the aircraft will speed up, and as you can see, the aircraft is being flown far more competently because it is currently on the autopilot. So you can notice that the pitch is slowly coming down as the aircraft accelerates. I'm going to just adjust heading slightly to the left here. So I'm going to set us up on a bit of a left-hand circuit for Liverpool and bring us back into land. And I can show you some of the techniques we can use in the descent and how we manage the propeller when we're coming into land. So I'd say it's probably around about a good time to start descending now. So let's get the aircraft set up for the descent, shall we? First things first, we're going to put the fuel flow full forward. That's a safety matter. Put it full forward just so we don't accidentally overlean the aircraft in the descent. The prop can stay exactly where it is, really. It depends on what we want to do. We can increase propeller RPM if we were at a lower RPM setting, and what that would do is actually turn the blades more flat to the airflow, give us more drag, and help to keep the aeroplane at a lower airspeed while we descend. So that's good if the aeroplane, especially if the aeroplane is very slippy, very efficient. It can be really useful to have almost like an air brake built into the aircraft in the shape of the prop lever. However, I'm going to keep it at 2500 for this, and I'm going to reduce power, and I'm just going to select VS mode and drop the aeroplane into about a 700 feet per minute descent, and pull the manifold pressure back. Keep the prop at 2500 RPM. And as you can see, the aircraft's actually decelerating a little bit, which is good. Going down and slowing down is probably about what we want to be doing. See the Mersey there. That's to let me know if any of you are locals to Liverpool, whether this is a good representation of how the city looks from the air. If any of you have seen it from the air. So I'll reselect our desired altitude. We'll go down to 1,000 feet. Let's see our runway over there. So we're getting a little bit low now, and as you can see, we're going to be flying over a populated area. So something that is encouraged, or at least I like to encourage, is to use lower RPM settings when you're flying around circuits and at low altitude, because it makes the aeroplane a lot quieter, and it's very good for noise abatement, for not upsetting the locals, basically. So to do that, we're going to, when we can already reduce our manifold pressure, so we can start to bring our RPM back. So I'm going to bring our RPM back again to 2100. Now we don't need that extra speed, certainly in the circuit, because we don't want to be zipping around at 150 odd knots as we're trying to fly the downwind leg. So I'm going to pull the power back and let the aircraft's airspeed start to settle again. And once we're inside our gear limiting speed, we can start to set the aircraft up for landing. Okay, alt's capturing at 1,000 feet. So let's do our pre-landing checklist. So first of all, I'm going to put the lights on. I'm also going to put the fuel pump on high. So brakes are set pressurized, undercarriage check down. Mixture or fuel flow is full rich. Mags are set both. Fuel pump is on and the tank is good. Flaps will speed check and select flaps 1. Instruments are all checked and set. Carb heat we don't have. Hatches and harnesses are presumably secure and the lights are on. Okay, so I'm going to just give us about 20 inches of manifold pressure, 19-20 inches, something to give us around about 100 knots. I'm looking for the runway threshold to be round about in the 10 o'clock position over my left-hand shoulder here, or our virtual pilot's left-hand shoulder. Of course, I'm going to turn the autopilot off now and fly by hand. Start bringing the aeroplane round onto our base leg. So still got the prop set down at 2100 RPM for that reduced noise signature. Onto our base leg now. Use power a little more. We're going to start descending. I'm going to select the next stage of flaps. Open up our cowl flaps just in case we need to make a low altitude go around. Concentrate on what I'm doing there. I think I've flown quite a wide circuit here, so I'm going to check our descent around about here. Don't want to be getting too slow either, so I'm going to add a bit more power. I'm going to start adding some RPM as well. What you ideally want to be avoiding is crossing the RPM with the manifold pressure. So say you're at 2300 RPM, you ideally shouldn't be setting any more than 23 inches of manifold pressure. Now that varies on different aircraft. It's certainly turbocharged and supercharged aeroplanes. It can be very different. So it's always good to read up on the book figures, recommended power settings. I'm fairly unfamiliar with this aircraft in real life. I've never flown one, so I've just had a quick browse through some of the aircraft documentation online before I filmed this video. So you'll forgive me for not using strictly book accurate figures as I'm flying around here. But like I said, it's just a quick guide to show you how to utilize these aircraft systems to make your life a little bit more realistic in flight sim. Not a 100% accurate guide on how to fly this aeroplane in real life. Although I would love to fly this aeroplane in real life. It's a very cool aeroplane. Right, so we're coming around onto final approach. Once we're wings level, I'm going to select full flap. And I'm going to do our final set of checks, which are reds, so that's fuel flow lever, full forward, blues, prop lever, max RPM, and greens, 3 green lights. And we are quite high here, and the annoying bitching Betty is giving us a don't sink, probably for our slightly high rate of descent. Got a bit of crosswind here, so I'm crabbing the aircraft off to the right. And we're a touch slow here too, so I'm going to add a bit of power. I'm going to approach at about 80 knots. Quite a slow approach speed in this aircraft. Certainly compared to contemporary 6-seater singles. I'm going to ignore the power piece now and just go for the numbers. It's a light aircraft at the end of the day, not an airliner, so I'm not going for the touchdown markers. And down we go. As you can see now, we're back on the ground. The RPM is behaving just like a fixed pitch prop again. So there's no real difference as you're taxiing around on the ground. What an awesome noise this aeroplane makes. Top marks for whoever did the sound modelling on this thing. Right, so we can turn our fuel pump off, close up our cowl flaps. Looking good. So, hopefully, that was a reasonably informative little video on the constant speed propeller unit. Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of theory behind this, and we could talk for hours and hours about it. And I'm sure if there were enough of you out there who wanted to hear that, then I'm sure we could put something like that together for you. But for now, hopefully this was a good way to spend 10 minutes of your time. If you enjoyed it, please drop us a like. If you like our stuff, drop us a subscription. Really, really helps the channel out. About 80%, I think, of our viewers at the moment aren't subscribed. So sort yourself out. Yeah, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribe. It'd be great. But until next time, I've been Kitty, and this has been Fly From Home. Bye-bye.